I rewatched Chris Weidman versus Bruno Silva just to see if it was as bad as everybody was saying, and it was actually worse than I thought it would be, if that's even possible. A lot of people are talking about this time in the second round where it's the first eye poke most people remember, but this is what I'm showing on screen right now happened earlier in the second round, and Chris Weidman swiped at Bruno Silva's eye like he did during the double eye poke that ended the fight. And this is another moment in the fight where, as you can see, Chris Weidman's fingers are stretched out as far apart as they could be. And this is, I'll get on to Chris Weidman's comments in a second, but this is, again, coming from a guy who said, look, it's not that easy to poke somebody. He actually said that in the post-fight press conference. He then did this later on, in the fight, where again he pokes Bruno Silva in the eye, and this is the point where people are talking about how Chris Weidman showed that he wasn't even being careful, because he said to the referee, look, I didn't poke him in the eye. He shook his head as the referee called timeout. I mean, absolutely incredible. And I'm not going to show the double eye poke at the end because everybody's seen it, but Chris Weidman's comments in the post-fight press conference really, in my opinion, exposed the fact that he may have done this on purpose, because he said a bunch of incredibly stupid things. One thing he said was that he said to Bruno Silva, look, you can't drop to the ground when you get poked in the eye. I've been poked in the eye in fights. It is what it is. You have to fight on. And he says, look, I wouldn't question if somebody's getting poked in the eye or not, but I don't know if he was looking for a way out. He actually said that. Now, I'm going to talk about how ridiculous that is from Chris Weidman, but the first comment where he said, look, you can't do this, you can't do that. I mean, who the hell are you, Chris Weidman, to say what somebody should do when they get poked in the eye? Absolutely absurd. You can lose your eyesight when somebody pokes you in the eye, and you're saying, well, you shouldn't do this, you shouldn't do that. I mean, what am I listening to? My God. Sorry for the outrage, folks, but listen, as somebody who likes and has respected Chris Weidman over the years, this was hard to listen to. I mean, if it was any other fighter, I'd be going off on them. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous. And this reminded me of some absurd cases earlier, or over the last few years, I should say. And this fight between Matt Mitrione and Travis Brown back on the undercard of Dominic Cruz versus TJ Dillashaw caught my attention because I remember watching this fight at the time, going off like the fans are going off on Chris Weidman here. Because if you haven't seen that fight, Matt Mitrione lit Travis Brown up in the first two rounds, particularly in the second. He landed some really nice shots. And in both rounds, the first and the second, Travis Brown landed a brutal eye poke, and this is the result here. You can see how Travis Brown is again stretching his fingers out in Matt Mitrione's eye, and this is what Matt Mitrione's eye looked like afterwards. I mean, it was absolutely incredible. This guy was seen double during the second round, and the referee was absolutely incompetent beyond belief, and Matt Mitrione got a raw deal because Matt Mitrione couldn't see anything. He slowed down, as you would do when you get poked in the eye like that, multiple times, and we'll finish on what happened. Travis Brown eventually managed to get the takedown. He got top position and ground and pounded Matt Mitrione to a finish. Because of eye pokes, he had no legit success before those eye pokes happened, and Matt Mitrione slowed down. And as much as I'm bagging on Chris Weidman because of his disgraceful conduct in the post-fight interview, Travis Brown was actually worse, if that's even possible. I mean, he wasn't even criticized by a journalist after the fight. He was asked about it, and he had this incredibly condescending, smug, higher than mighty attitude about himself. His look on the face, the look he had on his face was, again, incredibly smug, and he started getting aggressive with the journalist, who was actually just asking him a legit question. Look, would you rematch Matt Mitrione? And again, it was absolutely disgraceful. But the two occasions I want to briefly talk about that this reminded me of were, in my opinion, the worst occasions of a high-level fighter getting away with eye pokes. One is Kevin Burns against the late Anthony Johnson, where he eye-poked Anthony Johnson brutally throughout the fight. One time, Anthony Johnson collapsed because the pain was so bad, but Steve Mazzagatti, who was the original worst referee in the history of MMA, let the fight go on, and he didn't even apologize when it was shown on replay weeks later that the eye poke was as blatant as ever. And again, Steve Mazzagatti had a history of ruining people's careers. If you had not if you had not watched the sport back then, so I'm talking about 7, 8, 10 years ago, etc., you would not know that this guy was the original Mario Yamasaki. And he also ruined Jake Shields' opportunity to beat Husama Palhares, who may be the dirtiest fighter in MMA history. If you haven't seen what Palhares is known for, just go and watch it. I mean, it's incredibly disgraceful what this guy has been able to get away with over the years. But Jake Shields was beating him in the first 2 rounds. He was out-grappling him, he was maintaining top position, and Husama Palhares had multiple occasions like this here where he has his his thumbs directly in Jake Shields' eyes, pressing up with all of his force. Jake Shields is screaming out in pain, and Steve Mazzagatti is standing there like a complete idiot, letting it happen, saying to Palhares, look, watch the eyes. And Jake Shields got up, got in his face afterwards and said, what the hell are you doing? And again, I don't know how much money Jake Shields lost from winning that fight, but it was terrible. And this situation with Chris Weidman and Bruno Silva reminds me of those occasions, because you had a guy who clearly was using his reach and his fingers to keep his opponent at bay. Every single time he got close, he even attacked him with his fingers stretched out, like, again, Edward Scissorhands, as people are saying. He wasn't giving two you-know-whats about whether he was poking him in the eye or not. He was allowed to get away with it. And he finished with the mother of all disgraces, a double eye poke, which I don't think we've ever seen before. And he was able to get away with it. Absolutely insane. And going back to one of Chris Weidman's statements at the post-fight interview, well, I don't know if he was looking for a way out or not. What the hell are you talking about, Chris Weidman? Does anybody remember this occasion with Gegard Mousasi? And I'm not talking about the fight. Everybody remembers how Chris Weidman milked the knee, or the 2 knees, I should say, saying, I don't know what month it is. And then they poll the referees, which you're allowed to do, and Dan Murgliata found out that it was actually legal. Then all of a sudden Weidman says, no, I can continue. Everybody remembers that. But you may not remember that Chris Weidman in the post-fight press conference was saying, look, you shouldn't have done this. You shouldn't have gone to instant replay, so I should have won by DQ. Like that's something to be proud of. I mean, this guy clearly, he couldn't even hide back then that he wanted to, again, cheat the system pretty much. But I want to go back to this moment here where they stood up from one of Weidman's takedowns. Gegard Mousasi threw a front kick, and Chris Weidman grabbed his junk and looked at the referee and said, what the hell are you doing? This guy just kicked me in the nuts. And the reality is the kick did not land in the groin area. It landed around the belt area. But Chris Weidman, and I thought about this at the time when this fight happened in 2017, that the front kick was, again, legal, and Weidman was starting to feel the pressure. He started thinking, even though he was winning the fight, I might be losing grip of the fight here. I need to regain control, etc. Hence, milk a legal knee and claim it as illegal. But whatever. That was just one moment I wanted to go back to where Chris Weidman was suggesting Bruno Silva wanted out of the fight when he wanted out of a fight many years ago where, again, he tried to cheat the system. And again, this was absolutely disgraceful behaviour, but I just wanted to go through it in detail. And, people may be saying you're beating a dead horse, but it's important to talk about these kind of things. And again, I've torn into fighters for doing this kind of stuff before, but with Chris Weidman, I wanted to give him the benefit of the doubt when I saw it, but there were not only plenty of eye pokes, too many eye pokes, there was, in my opinion, disgraceful comments in the post-fight interview which showed he either intentionally went out there and eye poked his opponent, or he just didn't care that he did it. Either way, it is disgraceful. So let me know what you guys think down below about all of this, and what needs to happen to Chris Weidman for doing this, how disgraceful was this, and are there any other occasions where there was similarly terrible conduct by the fighters and the referees, and I've missed them. Let me know what you guys think. Catch you guys later. Be sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more.